Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. So, we were studying this 9 practices of preparatory bhakti, the Navadha bhakti. Of that, we have already studied the first 4, the Sravana, Kirtana, Smarana, and the Pada Sevana. And now comes the 5th practice, that's the Archana. Archana is the worship. So, Archana refers specifically to the deity worship, and it is certainly the most visible aspect of bhakti. That's something which you can see, that all the paraphernalia of the worship, that comes under Archana. So it has been described elaborately in verses 38 to 41 in the 11th chapter of the 11th part of Bhagavatam. It's the 11th canto, the 11th chapter, from verses 38 to 41, we find this Archana has been described elaborately to get the idea. So we will be going through those verses. So the 38th verses, what it says, Mama Archa Sthapane, Sraddha Swataha Sanghatya Chotyam Udyana Pavanakrira Pura Mandira Karmani. So it all has this visual aspects. What's that? That one should faithfully and lovingly support the installation of my deity. And individually or in cooperation with others, one should work for the construction of temples and cities, as well as flower gardens, fruit gardens, and special areas to celebrate my pastimes. So if you go to any Hindu temple, so you'll find the reference is here. So that's what, the temple will have nice gardens. There's a temple where the deity has been installed. The temple itself has its own architecture. There will be nice flower gardens. There will be fruit gardens. And there are areas, the Nat Mandira, where all the celebrations happen. Apart from Nat Mandira, there are some other places, the Sabhagrihas, the Nat Mandiras. So these are the places where the places for the congregation, for the celebration. So any of the Hindu temple. So we find these are the components of the Hindu temple, and the reference we find in the Bhagavatam. So that's the reference which we follow till date. Any Hindu temple you go, these are the things which they are speaking of. And then what? Sammarjan, this after establishing the temple, that there has to be a regular worship. So in the form of what? Sammarjana Upalepabhyam Seka Mandala Vartanai Griha Shusrusanam Maihang Dasavada Yadamayaya. So that one should consider oneself to be the humble servant. So that's very important. That once we enter the temple premises, there the question of all our hierarchy, distinction, all our social standings, that has to be kept aside. We are all the humble servant of the Lord. With that humility one has to enter. And then there shouldn't be any this duplicity. without duplicity. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that for a devotee, they should have mon muk ak. That whatever he's speaking, that should be in his, whatever is in his mind, his words should be corresponding to his what he's thinking. There shouldn't be any duplicity there. So without duplicity, and thus should help to clean the temple, which is the Lord's home, which is my home, where my means the God is as if speaking to his devotees. That is, the temple is the God's home. It should be kept clean. So this is a tradition everywhere, even in all our temples. In Belur Math, we find that how meticulously everything is kept clean. The idea is that Guru Maharaj is present there. He is walking down the entire premises. So sometimes we find some dark areas behind the shrine where no one goes. That also is kept clean. Because why? It's not that we who are just going around the temple. It's Guru Maharaj. He goes to the nook and corners of every place. So keeping that in mind, that it is his place, he is present there, he is loitering around the place with this bhava, with this attitude, one should keep the entire temple premises clean. They should clean the temple, which is the Lord's home. First, one should sweep and dust thoroughly. Just see, these are the traditions going on for thousands of years. That's what we do. It has to be kept clean. You have to sweep the dust thoroughly, and then one should further cleanse with water. We have to mop the place. And then, having dried the temple, one should sprinkle scented water and decorate the temple with mandalas. The mandalas are like even in the present day, they read say it's Alpana. Alpana is the mandalas. There's various type of the designs which we do on the floor to decorate the temple with all those things. So this, you will find that where is the reference to all the things which we still practice is in the Bhagavatam. And then amanitvam adambhitvam kritasya parikirtanam api deepavalokang me na upayunjan niveditam. This is what he's saying, that one should thus just act like my servant. With that humility, one should be entering the temple premises with the attitude of service as a servant. A devotee should never advertise his devotional activities. That he should be very humble enough. He is the best devotee what his service he is doing, no one knows. Silently they come and do the devotional services humbly. And that's the practice which has been mentioned here in the Bhagavatam. So they shouldn't advertise their devotional activities, and his service should not cause any sense of false pride. So that is a big paradox. We find that to get rid of ego, to get rid of all the negativities, we resort to spirituality. But if we are not careful, the place of spirituality may become again the place to develop this pride, sense of pride, ego, arrogance. We find that when we are not careful, those things do crop up in the temple premises. But here is a warning. We find Bhagavan is saying that how we should approach, that it shouldn't cause any false pride. One should, and near this idea that one should never use the lamps that are offered to me for other purposes, simply because there is a need for illumination. That there is need for illumination somewhere, so I take the lamp which I have lighted in front of the deity and take it to illumine the other places. No, that's the lamp which we are using for illuminating the shrine should be used for that purpose only. And similarly, one should never offer to me anything that has been offered to or used by others. So this is the idea, this Agra Bhaga, that you should never give whatever has to be offered to the deity. Before offering, we can have it as a consecrated food, but before offering, it shouldn't be offered or shared with anyone else. We find even in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, very interesting. It's very interesting an episode that one of the devotees was bringing some offerings for Sri Ramakrishna, some sweets he was bringing, and he was coming in some horse carriage, and in the road some children were playing. Seeing these children, he felt that sense of he felt an affection towards them, and he gave a few of the sweets which he was taking for Sri Ramakrishna to these children. And when he reached Dakshineshwar and he just offered it to Sri Ramakrishna couldn't accept. Very interesting, this devotee never mentioned that he actually has shared some of this food with the children. So Sri Ramakrishna was about to accept. He told, "No, I cannot accept." And then he asked, "Have you given some portion of it to someone else? Have you shared the food with someone else?" He told, "Yes." He told them that thing, that some children were playing, and just out of affection, I shared a few of the sweets with them. And Sri Ramakrishna then told that whenever you come here to him, never do that. And then the reason he told is very interesting, that what to speak of offering the shrine. Sri Ramakrishna himself, whenever he used to have food, first mentally he will offer it to the divine. Now here already that food has been shared with the children. So now how can he offer it to the divine mentally, the food which has already been shared with the children? And somehow he sensed it. That's very interesting. And that's the thing which he is relating to the devotee, that never do that. So that's why we find that the lives of these illumined souls, life of the avatars, are an exemplification of the scriptures. The scriptures, we will find, gets exemplified. The commentary, the living commentary of the scriptures we find in the lives of these holy men. So how nicely it has been actually exemplified through the life of Sri Ramakrishna. We find that one should never offer to the Lord anything that has been offered to or has been used by others. And then we find in the 41st verse what is saying, Yad yad ishtatamang loke yat cha ati priyamatmanah tat tat nivedayat mahyam tat anantyaya kalpate. That whatever is most desired by one in this world, that all the things which we like, and whatever is most dear to oneself, one should offer that very thing to the Lord, to me. Such an offering qualifies one for eternal life. So this is the idea of Atmavat Deva Sevanam. Atmavat, that whatever I like, the choicest thing, that I offer to the divine. What's the idea? That's the way of sublimating our desires, our greed, to devotion. The thing which I like, if I just simply take it directly, it becomes the expression of my greed. And now, first I offer it to the divine. I offer it to the divine, mentally pray to the divine, and just pray that he may consecrate the food. And then when I take the consecrated food as the prasadam actually we always translate it as the consecrated food, but the actual word prasada means tranquility. That which can lead to placidness, tranquility, clears the mind. It comes from the devotion, that once you have that food, it creates a sense of placidity and tranquilness within you, because the devotion wells up. Just see, the thing which is a subject of my desire and greed, the moment I offer it to the divine, it gets sublimated. Now, the same thing when I am taking, having that idea that it has been consecrated by the divine, immediately I find that the devotion wells up from within me. So that's the way of sublimating our desires instead of simply subjugating. And that's the beauty of devotion. That there is no question of subjugation. It is a question of sublimation. So we will find that Archana begins with invoking. in our all ritualistic worship, those who are even a bit aware of this ritualistic worship, there is a concept of avahana. That first, before the worship starts. So this is a very important thing, that many will be saying it's just a image, clay image, or made of stone, or maybe made of some metal, or maybe it's a picture, whatever it may be. It's not actually a picture, it is not a piece of stone, or it is not a piece of metal. Why? First, that invocation is done before the worship starts. That we invoke the divine in the deity. And after caring for him with, and then thereafter we care for him with love. Now he is, once the deity is invoked in the, in the image, once he is being invoked, now it's a living presence. And now the way we treat our near and dear ones with love and affection, in the same way we have to now relate to the divine, is manifesting through that deity, through that image. We have to relate through this love, devotion and service. Now, what's the real meaning of avahana? So this avahana is a very significant thing in the Hindu tradition. So what this avahana is? The deity is considered non-different from Ishvara. It's not just a symbol. It's not a substitute. It's not a type of mental prop, a suggestion with the help of which I am trying to invoke the presence of Ishvara. It's not a prop. It's the actual presence is to be invoked. That it becomes pranavanta. It becomes full of life. The actual presence has to be invoked in that deity. It's somewhat similar to the concept of this transubstantiation. Substantiation. It's in Catholic Christianity we find this transubstantiation. What's that? That the consecrated bread and wine is considered to have transformed into the body and blood of Jesus Christ. We find in the church, in the Catholic Christianity, that is a practice. They don't think it's just a figurative something or it's a mere symbolism. They take it as actual. It has really got transformed into the flesh and blood of Christ, the body and blood of Christ. So this transubstantiation. So that's the idea here we find even in the deity. It's not just a mere symbol, it's the living presence of the divine. So that's what we find this Ishvara is considered to be personally present in the deity. He's permeating, he has become leena. The word leena you have heard means merged. He has merged in that image and it has become lively. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say these images are not mrinmaya, not made of clay. It is chinmaya. It is full of consciousness. So that's the word which Sri Ramakrishna used. So these are very important. That when I am entering the shrine, see, even here, if some VIP comes, we are in some congregation waiting for some important person, maybe the Prime Minister, and then the sense of the feeling which we have, oh, he is about to come, a sense of awe, a sense of reverence, all those develops in us. The same type of feeling has to develop when I'm entering the shrine. If we have that faith that it is not a mere image, it is a living presence. I am just in the living presence of the divine. That's why in Hinduism, darshana, just to see the deity, is itself considered an extremely pious act. Just darshana. I'm doing nothing, just going and seeing, because what I'm seeing is not the image or just a photo. It is the living presence of the divine. So that's why this darshana itself plays a great role, has a great significance in the Hindu tradition. So we find if you go that it makes sense. If anyone for the first time is going to a temple, they will find that with what type of reverence these people are entering. Because they have that faith that it is the living presence of the divine. With so much of humility, with so much of reverence and devotion, they enter the shrine. That's something which surprises a lay person. What makes them feel so awestruck, because the subjective feeling is there in the presence, in the living presence of the divine. It's not just a mere image or a photo, it's the living presence of the divine. So the more we have that ingrained faith, the more is the effectiveness of this type of darshana, of just even seeing the deity. What to speak of worship? Just seeing itself brings a drastic transformation in the person who is full of faith. So now we come to this criticism that the Hindu tradition of worshipping the deity is called idol worship, that it is an idolatry. So this frequently that is described as the idolatry. From the Western perspective, it is described as an idolatry. So the Vedic traditions has to say something here. Very interesting, very simple argument. That you say it's idolatry. Do you say that God is omnipresent, omnipotent? Yes, God is omnipresent. Even in all the Abrahamic traditions, in the Western philosophy, the idea, the Western religion, in Western theology, the idea of divine is He is omnipresent, He is omnipotent, all-powerful, and He is present everywhere. Omnipresent means He is present everywhere. Omnipotent means He is all-powerful. And now when you say that He cannot take any form, He is formless, are you not questioning His omnipotence? If He is all-powerful, how can you limit His power by saying that He cannot have any form? When you say He is not present in the deity, in this form, image, are you not contradicting His omnipresence? If He is present everywhere, how come His existence gets limited when it comes to this image? That as He is not there. So you'll find that as if you are contradicting your own belief. So that's what, from the Vedic perspective, they say. If Lord is omnipotent, He can of course take form. If He is omnipresent, He is of course present in this form too. So that's one way of understanding. And another very important point we have to understand, that why from the Western perspective these images are considered to be an idol. It's an idolatry. Why? But here an interesting concept comes, very interesting concept. What's that? That in the Western tradition, you will find the soul is equated with the mind. The famous quotation of Descartes, that I think, therefore I am, which speaks of identification of the self with the mind. But in Hindu tradition, in the Vedantic tradition, we find the self is considered something beyond mind as well as the body. It's not the mind, it is something beyond the mind. The consciousness, the mind itself is inert. Because of its association with the conscious principle, it appears to be something which is conscious, but actually it is inert. So, from this standpoint, very interesting thing, they will say that as per the idea of idolatry, consider that a Western, one who from the Western tradition may think that when I say that God is all love, it's a mental conception of God is all love, that He is good, He is all powerful, He is just, He is beyond human comprehension. And even just to say God is, isn't it all your mental conceptualization? So as from the Hindu tradition, God is something beyond the mind. So if we really have to consider that anything which is manifested through the mind and the senses, both are idol. That way, the way in the Western tradition, the God is thought of as formless, but at the same time that He is having those attributes of love, compassion, He's all powerful, He's just, He's good, all these are after all conceived by the mind, and hence it also becomes an idol. not just what I perceive through the senses. That alone is idol. What I conceive through the mind, that also is an idol. Because from the Vedantic standpoint, that mind and body both are something which is not consciousness, which is not the self. Self is something beyond the mind. So they will say that from the Western standpoint, what you say about God, these also are idol to them. Then is it harmful? No. Then why it's still okay? Because they say that we are actually in truth, we are trying to relating to the one who is ultimately transcends both mind and senses, and yet we can approach them through the mind and senses. It's only the question of change of the perspective. That whatever I am conceiving through the mind, seeing through the mind, what I am perceiving through the senses, is a consciousness which is illuminating my mind and senses and is projected as my mental concepts as well as my all the physical perceptions. Both are being illumined by the self. If I am aware of this fact, then what happens? I can see the divinity behind all the manifestations, whether it is all mental concepts or it is an idol. So how you see it? If you see it as the projection of the divine, then you are always aware of the divine. Then the idea that it's an idol falls off. Then the way the mental concepts are related to the divine, you think they are something which represents divine. In the same way, the physical representations are also divine. So this is the idea we find, the standpoint which from the Vedantic tradition we all find in all the traditions. The people, a devotee takes this standpoint, and that's how that for him everything becomes the manifestation of the divine, and by approaching that with awareness can lead to our emancipation, can lead to the generation of devotion. Because I am not approaching something which is inert. The divinity is manifesting through it. Just the way I never think a human being as inert. But is anything conscious? My body is conscious? No. Just we are saying the mind is conscious? No. Is a consciousness, the moment it manifests to the mind and the body, it appears to be conscious. And then we relate to anyone. When I am just relating to a human being, I relate it to him as a conscious being. But actually, is his body conscious? No. Is a consciousness permeating through his body, making him look like consciousness. And then I can relate to him as a conscious being, and conscious being alone. Similarly, a devotee, when he is aware that it is the divinity, it is the conscious principle, the ultimate conscious principle which is manifesting through the mind, through the senses, and then all the mental concepts as well as all the physical perceptions, they become lively, they become chinmaya, they become full of consciousness. And by relating to that as an expression of consciousness, that helps them to grow in devotion. So that's the idea behind Archana. So now let us returning to the logic of Archana from the point of view of its adherents. So just as the Atman permeates our physical body, made by the material elements, and animates it with consciousness, similarly Ishvara, the Supreme Atman, the Paramatma, he also permeates the physical form of the deity, which is also made of elements, and animates it with divine presence. So just as I think others' body as conscious, because consciousness is permitting it, similarly this form, this deity is also consciousness, because God out of His grace has made it something full of consciousness by attributing His consciousness, by permeating His consciousness in that form. He's permeating that consciousness in that form, and that way we are relating to the divine and divine alone. But there is one difference. That what's the difference? The difference is that we are forced into a body. Because of our past samskaras, because of the past karmas, we are forced into a body, and not by our any choice of our own immediate choice. It's as per our karma. As per our karma, we are forced into a body. But whereas Ishvara enters into the deity as an act of grace, bound by his bhakti, bound by his devotion. So, because of this devotion, out of grace, he enters willingly. It's not that he's forced to enter there. So that's the difference. So as is the case with mantra, which is the Nama avatar, as we already studied when we were studying Kirtana, that the name of the Lord is not different from the Lord. It is one and the same. When I'm taking the name of the Lord, it is actually relating to the Lord in the form of sound. It is a sonic manifestation of the divine. Why the devotees give a very simple reason. That when I say water, it doesn't quenches my thirst. So water though is a word which is different from real water. But the name of God is one with God. Why? The moment I take the name, my heart fills with devotion. So he is in his name. So that's the simple way a devotee reasons that how he is one with his name. Similarly, the deity also is one with the divine. That's why we find Ramanujacharya is to, there's the proponent of the Vishishtadvaita. He used to call the deity as Archavataram. That the divine, out of his grace, manifests spatially, in a special way on the deity to grace the devotees. So the devotees can easily, by perceiving through the senses, the divine can relate to him through devotion. So there's one further element that comes under this category of Archana, is that one is we shouldn't offend the bhaktas. Just the way we are devoted to the Lord, the bhaktas are the physical representation of the divine. If the image, the stone image is the physical representation of the divine, similarly his devotees are also. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say very nicely, that God is everywhere, but a devotee's heart is his drawing room, is his living room. What it is meant by that? That God is everywhere, but the heart of a devotee is his living room. That to understand this, that let us try to understand with an example. That in my own house, I have access to each and every point of the house. I can go anywhere. I have the freedom to go anywhere. But when someone comes to meet me, and someone comes when I have a guest, where I meet him? In the living space, isn't it? So that way, God is everywhere. But where to find him is in the heart of the devotee. So that's the living space. There he meets his devotees. The heart. There he meets. So these devotees are the living representation of the divine, because in their heart the God is sporting always. So sometimes these people, this the so-called the devotee of God, because of our position in life, because of our learning, seeing a simple devotee, someone may ignore them, someone may not pay proper respect, be indifferent, and sometimes even behave badly with them. So here we find this Bhagavatam is uttering a word of caution. What is saying? Na bhajati kumanishina sa ijyam hari adhanatma dhana priyo rasagya sruta dhana kula karmanang madaiye vidadhati papam akinchaneshu satsu. The first, he is saying the Supreme Personality, the Godhead. He becomes very dear to those devotees who have no material possessions, very humble, poor souls, but are fully happy in possessing the devotional service of the Lord. In all the spiritual traditions, if you find when the prophet came, when the Son of God came, the divine incarnations came, who are his associates? The very, very simple, humble souls. For Jesus is the fisherman. All his apostles are the fishermen. So in all the avatars' life you will find, it is just the so-called humble soul who are not very rich, because wealth makes us extremely poor. For a rich person, what happens? A rich person has only wealth, nothing else. All the positive qualities, all those things we find sometimes is lacking. Is full of pride. It's not always, but most of the time. Pride, arrogance, worries, tension. With wealth, our worries, tensions, these all increases. As we have more choices, we have more worries. For a poor, humble soul, all this becomes a positive factor instead of a negative. If he is a devotee of God, then his poverty actually helps him to develop more devotion. But he is free from so many, all these negativities, which is bound to get associated with wealth. So that's why he is saying that the devotee who is poor, he is very dear to such devotees. We'll find in Mahabharata, there's this nice story that when Krishna came to the Kauravas, Duryodhana just gave a royal treatment. There was an arrangement for these lavish dishes. But Krishna didn't accept that. He went to the quarter of Vidura. He was poor, humble soul. And he had nothing special to give to the Lord. It was just a little rice and some greens. And the Lord was happy to have that food in the humble quarters of Vidura. So such examples we find in Bhagavatam, in Mahabharata. These examples are there. So he is extremely fond of such devotees who have no material possessions but are full of devotion. And indeed the Lord relishes the devotional activities of such devotees. And now the Bhagavatam is warning, after saying that those who are puffed with learning, wealth, aristocracy, and all sorts of activity which results in some fruition. I do this to get this. Also, they are called fruitive activities. So those who are all engaged in this and they are very proud of their possessions, of their material possessions, of their position in life, and they often deride such devotees. So even if such people offer the Lord, so you deride such people, they are these devotees, and you just show your opulence, your your wealth, that becomes a show by offering this profusely to the divine. I go and make huge offerings. God is saying that if you have not shown proper, you have insulted or derided such devotees and then come to offer with all those opulences, know it for certain, it is not going to be accepted. So these ideas we find everywhere. Even in the Bible we are saying that Jesus is saying that if you have a quarrel with your brother, first mitigate it, resolve it, and then come to my altar. Otherwise, the offerings won't be accepted. So the same idea we find even in the Bhagavatam, that those who deride the devotees, for such people, they offer the Lord worship, whatever worship they offer, the Lord doesn't accept them. That's what he's saying. So in Archana, this also comes, not only that your devotion to the deity in the form of the image, but also devotion to his devotees, the humble devotees. One should be very careful that in no way they should be neglected, offended, derided. So that's the thing Bhagavatam is saying as a warning. And then the importance of Archana is also we find. Now whenever we are studying Bhagavatam, we find this Bhagavad Gita also says the same thing. So in Bhagavad Gita as a reference, we find in this 9th chapter, from the 29th to the 32nd verse, this importance of Archana has been stressed even in Bhagavad Gita. So what he's saying, these verses, we just just go through them quickly. Samohang sarva bhuteshu name dveshvasti na priya ye bhajanti tumang bhaktya mai te teshu chapyaham. that I am equally disposed to all living beings. I am neither inimical nor partial to anyone. But the devotees who worship me, that he has no such partiality for anyone. He is neither inimical to the so-called those who are indifferent to the Lord or even inimical towards the Lord, and he is not having special favor for his devotees. He is equal to the all. After saying that, what he is saying? But the devotees who worship me with love reside in me and I reside in them. Both. So this reminds of Sri Ramakrishna's quotation that he says that God being all-pervading, he is existing in everyone. But whom I call a devotee? God resides in everyone. But the one who resides in him. So he is a devotee. So God is residing in everything. That he resides in every one of us. But do we reside in him? So if we do that, then he is a real devotee. He is doing the real worship. So who worship me, says, but the devotees who worship me with love, they reside in me, and at the same time I reside in them. So he residing in all, that's the common factor. But what makes one a devotee? When we reside in him. That's what God is saying. So apichet sudurachara. This is something, a strong declaration in Bhagavad Gita. That even if one is the vilest of the sinners, but he worships the Lord with full devotion, exclusive devotion. Bhajate mam ananya bhak. Sadhureva samantavya. Samyak vyavasito hisa. So he has to be considered as a righteous being because he has taken the proper resolve. Then what's the proper resolve? That yes, I have done all this heinous crime, but now I have understood that the Lord alone is the be-all and end-all of my existence, and I simply resign to him. So he has taken the first step. Sometimes we find that our so-called goodness becomes our obstacle. That how? With all our goodness, we develop a holier than the attitude. I am great. I am greater than others. That actually goes on nourishing our ego. And that distances us from the Lord. And the one who has done the vilest of crime act and is repentant, he weeps in front of the Lord and is asks for forgiveness and wants to be reformed, transformed. So God is saying that he is also know such a person to be righteous because he has taken the correct resolve. For him, the growth will be something much faster than the one, in spite of the fact that he is righteous, has developed the ego because of that holier than thy attitude. So kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashva shanti nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhaktya pranashyati. Pratijanihi. That go and declare boldly. God is giving that assurance. What that? That quickly they become such a person. In the previous verse he told that even a heinous sinner, if he takes, he resigns to me, know him to be righteous. Why is he righteous? Because very quickly he will become virtuous and he will attain lasting peace. So, knowing that, I assure you that even such a person, he is not doomed, eternally doomed. There is no question of eternal damnation. Once he comes and resigns to me, know it for certain, there is no force on earth who can stop his transformation. So knowing that, that assurance from my side, go and declare to the world. Pratijanihi is just shout unto the world what you have to tell, what you have to declare to the world, that my devotees are never lost. Name bhaktya pranashyati. That once we resign to the divine, know it for certain, and nothing can destroy us. So that's the assurance of the divine. Even in Rama avatar, we find there's the greatness of Rama. What's that? He's saying that whoever it may be, even my enemy, if he comes and says that I resign to you, he becomes mine. That's the assurance of the Lord. So beautiful these words are. That whoever resigns to him, he becomes his own. And that's the thing, here Bhagavan is saying in Bhagavad Gita, go and declare to the world loudly that there is no destruction for my devotees. Mang hi partha vyapasritya yepi supapayonaya striya vaishyas tatha shudra stepi yanti param gatim. So we find in that old societal structure that the women were barred from studying the scriptures. The small infant, of course, there is no question of studying the scriptures because his intellectual level is not up to it. Or someone belonging to some lowly castes, those who have no formal education. So even for such person, the ones that take refuge in me, know it for certain that all those who take refuge in me, whatever be their birth, race, gender or caste, even those whom society scorns, will attain the supreme destination. So that's the assurance we find in Bhagavad Gita. And that's the importance of this Archana. That once with that resignation we approach Him, God is assuring that nothing can destroy Him. So thus we find in Bhagavad Gita this importance of Archana has been stressed so much. So however, in fact, while the bhaktas are as dear to the Ishvara as He is to them, all living entities are nothing other than the manifestations of Ishvara. Say, yes, in devotees He resides, He also resides in devotees. But what about the others? Though He is residing in them specially, but we cannot deny the fact that He is manifesting to the entire creation. So after saying that we shouldn't insult a devotee, we shouldn't show disrespect to a devotee, again we will find He's saying that we should show love to all beings. Sarva bhute daya. That also becomes an extended sadhana, an extended part of Archana or worship. The seeing the Lord in everyone. As we find in the third skandha, in the third canto, where the Kapila gives spiritual instructions to his mother, and there we find these verses related to serving the Lord through all beings. What's that? The 21st verse, the 29th chapter of the third canto. What it's saying? Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhutatma avasthita sada bhuta atma avasthita sada tam avagyaya mang martya kurute archita virambanam. That I am present in every living entity as the soul. If someone neglects or disregards the soul everywhere and engages himself in the worship of the deity in the temple, that is just an empty show, virambana. So that worship is not accepted. And then we find in the same chapter, in the 27th verse, there are so many other verses, these few verses we have selected, where this idea of worshipping the divine through all the beings is being highlighted. So that also becomes a part of the Archana. What is being mentioned in the 27th verse? Athamang sarveshu bhuteshu, athamang sarva bhuteshu bhutatmanam kritalayam arhayet danamanabhyam maitriya abhinnena chakshusha. Arhayet, again this arhayet means Archana. They have to worship me, not just helping the one who is in need of help. I have to Archana, worship me through dana, through mana. That whatever things they need, I give. That is dana. Mana means by showing respect. It's not with the idea that I am something great, that you are lowly, I am great, and I offer something to you as a help. No. It is you who are great. It is the Lord who has came as the poor, as the destitute, to offer, to accept the offering from me. So it is I who am the lowly. I offer to the Lord in that form. So that's the idea of Archana. So sadhana and associated with mana. Mana means respect. And abhinna chakshusha. That is also important. That after all, the entire creation is one with the divine. So there should be an idea of non-separateness. Actually, He is one with me. Just the way I consider my kith and kin as one with me, the same way all the beings, maybe he is poor, he is destitute, he needs my help, then I have to have the sense of this unity, abhinna chakshas, non-separateness, with respect, not with the idea of something that he is lowly. With full respect, I have to serve him, and that then becomes one of the best archana. This arhat mar. So this is the best form of archana, which the Lord is assuring in the Bhagavatam. So thus we see that it's a very physical act. What I am feeling within, that find expression through our service as attitude. So all these first 5 practices speaks more of the physicality, but all these 5 these practices, which shows also physical expressions, has to be preceded by some mental attitudes. The next 4 of the 9 practices, we will find they actually speak of the mental attitude with which this physical activities has to be undertaken. So that way they are all overlapping. It's not that we can separate them. They're all overlapping, because these are the mental attitudes which will follow. Like Vandana, this after Archana will come Vandana, and then Dasya, Sakhya, Atma Nivedana. So all these things, there is not much reference to these in the Bhagavatam. There are references, very few references. So most probably all these 4 we will take together up in the next class, where we will find this speaks of the mental attitude with which the first 5 these practices, which have much more physical expression, that has to be practiced. So in the next class we will take up these remaining 4 practices of this 9-fold devotional practice of the Navada Bhakti. So with this we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.